My name is Julie, and this is my story. It had been dark for hours, but I was still focused on my work at the office. I was so caught up in sketching, making changes, and working on the project that I didn't notice when my boss, Jack, walked in. He stood at the door with a concerned look and reminded me to take care of myself. Jack pointed out how late it was and asked if I was going to pick up my son from boxing class. He appreciated how hard I was working but warned me not to overdo it. I was shocked to realize it was almost 6 p.m. and I needed to hurry to get Jerry. Quickly gathering my things, I explained to Jack that I wanted to talk to him about the new design for a children's book cover, which mixed traditional styles with modern trends. I rushed out, leaving Jack behind as he looked over my sketches. As I made my way to the boxing academy, my mind was racing, thinking about how I managed so many things: a sick husband, a child, housework, and a demanding job. When I arrived, I found Jerry waiting in the locker room, anxious but relieved to see me. He had been alone for an hour, thinking I had forgotten him. I hugged him, apologized, and asked him about his day and homework. Jerry had calmed down and proudly told me he finished his homework while waiting. I praised him, feeling lucky to have such a responsible son. I knew he missed his father, my first husband, who had passed away, leaving a big hole in our lives. When we got home, we found Adam, my current husband, lying on the couch, grumpily flipping through TV channels. He complained about being hungry since lunch and feeling ignored, calling himself an unhappy, handicapped man. Asked him if his leg was hurting and promised to make dinner quickly and prepare a compress for him. Adam settled down, waiting for the food, while Jerry, irritated by the situation, went into the kitchen to help me peel potatoes and chop tomatoes. I praised my son, feeling thankful to have him by my side. Since Adam got sick, my life had become really hard. I had to split my time between taking care of Jerry, handling my demanding job, and looking after my sick husband. There was no time left for myself or to rest. I was always tired. At work, my coworkers respected me because I worked hard and put my heart into everything I did. But my story started long before that. I was the youngest in my family. My parents passed away when they were quite old, first my mom, and then my dad. After that, I felt very alone in my big 4-bedroom apartment in Wilmington. I missed my mom's comforting words, her advice, and my dad's kind looks. Sadly, they weren't there during one of the hardest times of my life. That's when I met Kyle, my first husband. He was in the military, often away in combat zones, coming home only for short breaks. We fell in love quickly, got married, and I waited for him during his long missions. When Jerry was born, Kyle promised to leave his dangerous job after our son's christening, but that promise was never kept. He didn't come home again, and I became a widow at 27. It was a long and painful time of mourning, but I found strength in my son and my work. Years later, my life changed when I met Adam. He was very different from Kyle, confident, charming, and romantic, always bringing me flowers and poetry. Without realizing it, I fell in love again. Adam was good to Jerry, and we decided to get married, partly because Adam pushed for it. He worked in construction, traveling often, and brought financial stability to our home. But some of my coworkers didn't trust him. My close friend Joyce even warned me that Adam's frequent travels and big paychecks seemed suspicious. She hinted he might have a secret life, possibly even another family. I always felt uncomfortable when people talked about Adam like that. I defended him, saying he worked hard and brought home money, which was what mattered. I also shared the happy news that we were expecting a baby, and Jerry was excited about having a sibling. But then, tragedy struck. While working at a construction site, Adam fell from the 3rd floor and badly injured his leg and ankle. He came home with a splint, but even after a long time, he still couldn't walk properly. For a man who was always active, this accident was devastating. He felt useless and distant from everyone around him. I did my best to support Adam, taking on all the responsibilities of the house, caring for Jerry, and being the family's only source of income. With Adam just lying around and not working, I felt especially overwhelmed, especially with a new baby on the way. But I was determined to stay strong for my children. What worried me most was Adam's behavior. He didn't seem to care about anything, not even Jerry's progress at school. I thought he could at least help Jerry with homework or read to him, since his leg didn't stop him from doing that. But instead, Adam acted like a child, always wanting attention and affection, rarely getting off the couch. I felt torn between my love for Adam and my growing frustration with how he was acting. I tried to lift his spirits, asking why he was so down and suggesting he get some fresh air on the balcony. I even offered to help him walk, thinking it might help him recover faster. I asked him if he was interested in how my day went, how Jerry was doing, or how I was feeling, but Adam just said I didn't understand his pain. He complained about constant pain in his leg, saying the painkillers didn't work, and called himself a useless invalid. He accused me of being selfish, thinking only of myself, and said that pregnancy wasn't an illness, questioning why I was making such a big deal out of it. A few days later, Adam found a woman online named Lauren, who claimed to be a healer. She promised to cure his muscle and bone problems quickly. I tried to explain to Adam that it was probably a scam, but he was convinced it would work. Lauren started visiting our home regularly, and Adam said his pain was getting better. One day, I came home earlier than usual because Jerry was sick and had stayed home from school. When I arrived, I noticed a pair of unfamiliar women's shoes in the hallway and realized Lauren was there. The kitchen door was closed. I wanted to greet both Lauren and Adam, but something made me stop. I quietly approached and listened to their conversation. I was curious about how the treatment was going, but also wondered why the door was closed. I overheard Adam talking to Lauren, calling her his love and complaining about pretending to be weak. He talked about how they would soon have the house to themselves, freeing them from me. Lauren seemed worried, telling Adam to be patient and not rush things. She mentioned that they had to be careful, especially since I was pregnant, to avoid suspicion. Then, Lauren revealed a chilling plan involving poison in tea. As I listened, a chill ran through me. My coworkers had been right. Who had I trusted? The conversation I overheard was terrifying and hard to believe. My first instinct was to burst in, confront them, and kick Adam and his lover out. But I quickly stopped myself, realizing I needed proof of their plans. My mind raced with thoughts about Adam's true intentions. After thinking frantically, I quietly walked back down the hall, loudly closed the door, and called out to announce I was home. Lauren came out of the kitchen, acting normal, saying she had just finished a session and praising how much better Adam was doing. I kept calm, thanked her, and promised to pay for her sessions. After she left, I had a brief conversation with Adam, took care of him, and checked on Jerry. I made excuses about being tired and having a headache, though inside, I was still in shock from Adam's lies and betrayal. The next day at work, I was distracted, crying in the bathroom and unable to focus. I didn't know how to escape this situation or expose them. My distress caught the attention of Jack, my boss, who had been watching me with concern. During a quiet moment, he gently asked what was going on, saying he could tell I had been crying and that it hurt him to see me like this. Surprised by his concern, I ended up telling him everything. Jack and I had a long-standing trust, and after sharing my story, I felt a little lighter. I confided in him about my fears, saying I felt like I was living with a traitor and a murderer. I asked for his advice on how to protect Jerry and myself. Jack took my concerns seriously and suggested we go to the police. He offered to call a detective he knew and encouraged me to tell them everything. He assured me the detective was trustworthy and would help. Then, Jack came up with an idea: to secretly loosen the screws on Adam's wheelchair and record him with a hidden phone. If Adam stood up when the wheelchair broke, we'd have proof. Jack reassured me that the police were ready to help and that I wasn't alone in this. I felt a huge sense of relief, gaining strength from his support. After speaking with the detective, my fear lessened a bit. The detective promised to investigate Adam and Lauren, warning me to be careful, avoid danger, and only eat and drink things I had prepared myself. But even with these plans in place, I still felt angry every time I saw Adam. My frustration and resentment grew stronger as the night went on. I carefully loosened the screws on Adam's wheelchair, set up the phone to record, and waited. When Adam leaned on the chair, the wheels came off, and he fell to the floor, but he quickly stood up. Jerry heard the noise and ran into the room, surprised to see Adam standing. I started clapping sarcastically, pointing out how well those healer sessions must have worked. I confronted Adam about his lies and pretending to be sick. Realizing he'd been caught, Adam tried to fake pain and limp, but I angrily told him to stop the act because the truth was clear now. As Adam struggled to come up with an excuse, the doorbell rang. Jerry opened the door, and Jack walked in with a police officer. I had told Jack about the plan, and he had been waiting for the right moment. The officer quickly restrained Adam and announced his arrest for attempted murder. Adam desperately protested, saying he was innocent and that he loved me, but the detective told him to be quiet. The detective revealed that I had sent a video of Adam's sudden recovery and that Lauren, his accomplice, had already confessed. Still in shock, I watched as Adam was taken away, unable to say goodbye or fully process what had just happened. Jerry went up to Jack and thanked him for helping me, saying he never liked Adam. Jack assured Jerry that Adam wouldn't come back and offered to stay around and help if Jerry was okay with it. Jerry happily agreed, even comparing Jack to a movie hero for exposing Adam's lies. That day changed my life. Jack suggested Jerry watch some cartoons while he and I talked about grown-up things. Jerry understood and went to his room, leaving us alone. Jack hugged me, trying to calm my nerves, and reassured me that it was all over. Adam and Lauren would be in prison for a long time. In a daze, I muttered about my bad luck with men, my first husband dying, my second turning out to be a criminal, and now being pregnant with his child. I questioned if something was wrong with me, feeling completely lost. Jack gently told me that I had missed noticing someone who had been by my side all these years. He confessed that he had always loved me and would never betray me. Jack encouraged me to see what I already had, but he made it clear he wasn't pressuring me. Finally, allowing myself to trust again, I hugged Jack and thanked him for always being there. I admitted that I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a while, I felt a little bit of hope. I could have returned Jack's feelings, but I wanted to take my time to get to know him better. Jack reassured me, saying he deeply respected me and wanted to be my friend first. He promised to stay by my side, if that's what I needed. I told him I didn't want him to leave, but I needed time to process everything. From that moment, my life slowly started to get better. Even though my pregnancy was difficult and I had dark thoughts, Jack was always there for me. Our relationship grew stronger, and eventually, I fell in love with him. I divorced Adam and married Jack, realizing he was the loving and trustworthy man I had always dreamed of. As time passed, Jack proved to be reliable and caring toward both Jerry and me. Our boutique thrived, and Jack often had to travel for business. One night, about a month before my due date, my water broke unexpectedly. Panicking, I called an ambulance and barely managed to ask a neighbor to watch Jerry before I passed out. The birth was extremely hard, and I drifted in and out of consciousness. Among the medical staff, I didn't recognize one of the nurses. It was Hannah, Adam's accomplice, seeking revenge. When I woke up, I immediately felt something was wrong. The doctor approached me with a sad expression and told me the heartbreaking news that my baby hadn't survived. I covered my face and cried, feeling my world fall apart. Jack tried to comfort me, reminding me that Jerry still needed me and promising to stay by my side. We buried the baby, and I cried many tears over the tiny grave, struggling to accept the loss. If it hadn't been for Jerry's strength and maturity, I don't know how I would have made it through the pain. 6 years after losing my baby, the memory still weighed heavily on my heart, but life had moved forward. Our boutique, called Canada, had become one of the most famous shops in Florida City, drawing customers from all over the country. Jack and I worked in perfect harmony, often understanding each other with just a few words. Jack and Jerry, now 15, had developed a strong father-son bond. Jerry was passionate about soccer and an excellent student. One day, I had to take the subway for an important business meeting because our car was in the shop. On the way, I saw a boy about 6 years old, using crutches. He looked abandoned and dirty, and my heart ached for him. I bought some pastries and a warm drink, then approached him to offer the food. He was so hungry that he almost choked while eating, so I watched him carefully, feeling a deep sense of concern for this child. I asked the boy his name and why he was begging. After finishing his food, he shyly but with some trust told me his name was Stephen and explained how he had hurt his leg. Worried, I asked why his parents hadn't taken him to a doctor, thinking there might be a way to help since he was still so young. Stephen sighed and shared his heartbreaking story. His mother was an alcoholic, and his father was never around. A wave of sadness and compassion swept over me. I hugged him, trying to comfort him, and promised to help. Stephen looked at me with a mix of hope and disbelief, unsure if anything could really change. I felt a strong need to help this child, and told him I would do everything I could to make things better. Wanting to reassure him, I told Stephen not to lose hope. I quickly called Jack, my voice shaky with emotion as I explained what was happening. Jack arrived soon after, listened to Stephen's story, and agreed we should help. We decided to go to Stephen's home to talk to his mother and better understand the situation. Stephen led us to his apartment, looking nervous. As we prepared to leave, I noticed his worn, dirty clothes and told him we would buy new ones on the way. When we arrived at the apartment, a strong smell of alcohol and cigarettes greeted us. The place was in terrible shape, and Stephen's mother was snoring loudly in a chair. I'll never forget the sadness in Stephen's eyes as he explained his mother's situation. He told us she hadn't woken up since the night before, after drinking with some men in the kitchen. My heart ached as Stephen described how his mother would yell at him when she woke up, demanding money for more alcohol and cigarettes. The pain in his voice was clear when he asked why his mother couldn't love him like other mothers do. Jack and I exchanged troubled looks and made a decision. We told Stephen we would take him home with us and see a doctor about his leg the next day. We left a note for his mother, explaining what we were doing. Stephen's gratitude was overwhelming. He hugged me tightly, calling me a fairy godmother, and said that maybe magic was real after all. His words brought a sad smile to my face as I gently stroked his curly hair. On our way home, we bought Stephen new clothes and a backpack with essentials. Despite everything, his excitement about starting a new life with us was contagious, lifting the heaviness of the situation, if only for a moment. All I could think about was taking care of Stephen. After giving him a bath and looking at his leg, we realized how bad his condition was. His leg was clearly deformed, and it broke my heart all over again. After a healthy meal and putting on clean clothes, Stephen fell asleep with a peaceful smile on his face. In the kitchen, Jack, Jerry, and I gathered to talk about what to do next. I was determined to care for Stephen, but Jack had concerns about the legal side of adoption, warning me that the process could be complicated. Jerry, excited about having Stephen join our family, promised to be a great big brother. Jack asked if I was ready for the long, difficult road of adopting Stephen. I told him with certainty that seeing Stephen in the subway had changed me, and I was committed to giving him the happy, normal childhood he deserved. The next day, I took Stephen to a pediatric orthopedist. After an exam, x-rays, and a CT scan, the doctor explained that Stephen's leg condition was serious and would need complicated surgery and long-term rehabilitation. When asked if he was okay with going through all that, Stephen excitedly said yes, knowing it would help him walk, run, and ride a bike again. His determination brought tears to my eyes as I hugged him, promising we'd handle everything. Talking to Stephen's mother, Sophia, was tough. We found her drunk and had to wake her up with cold water. Sophia angrily protested, saying we had no right to make decisions about her son. I tried to gently explain how serious Stephen's condition was and offered to pay for everything. But Sophia, irritated, threatened to call the police if we didn't return Stephen. Jack, reaching his limit, slammed his hand on the table and told her to go ahead and call the police, warning that she'd lose custody if they saw how Stephen was living. The tension in the room was high, and I held my breath, hoping for a solution that would give Stephen the chance he deserved. Jack placed some alcohol bottles and food on the table, watching Sophia's reaction. My heart raced as she quickly understood the situation and signed the papers without hesitation. She then began to cry, saying she loved her son but was just going through a hard time. I felt a mix of pity and frustration as she explained that she drank to forget her problems because she couldn't find work. Jack and I shared the same thought: people struggling with addiction shouldn't be raising children. It was unfair to Stephen to make him live like that. Once we were back outside, Jack and I sighed with relief, both agreeing that we could never send Stephen back to that environment. It wasn't a place for a child, and we were amazed at how he had survived there for so long. I quickly began preparing for Stephen's surgery, making sure all the necessary tests were done. When the doctor asked for blood donations from the family, I was shocked to find out that Stephen and I had the same rare blood type. The doctor's question about whether we could be related took me by surprise. I explained that we had found Stephen and were just trying to help him. We didn't think we were related. The doctor suggested a DNA test to check, which left me feeling both curious and nervous. When I told Jack, he pointed out how much Stephen and I looked alike. I felt confused and amazed, but agreed to the DNA test, trying to make sense of everything. During Stephen's surgery, I was incredibly nervous, praying that everything would go well. When the doctor finally came out with good news, I was overwhelmed with relief. In the weeks that followed, I was amazed at how close Stephen and I had become in such a short time. His strength during his recovery touched my heart, and I found myself constantly cheering him on, feeling so proud of his progress. At night, I would lie in bed thinking about the possibility that Stephen and I might be related. It felt like I was trying to solve a family mystery I hadn't even known existed. When Jack asked what I was thinking, I told him how incredible it was to imagine that Stephen might be a distant relative. As the day for the DNA test results got closer, my anxiety grew. I knew that, no matter what the test said, Stephen was already part of our family. I told Jack and Jerry, and they both nodded in agreement, ready to accept Stephen no matter what. One day, Jack came running into the room, holding some papers, looking excited. He told me to sit down and explained that the DNA test results had arrived. The test confirmed what the doctor had suspected: Stephen was my biological son with a 95% probability. I was stunned, unable to process what I was hearing. I started wondering aloud about the baby I was told had died at the hospital, realizing that my son had been alive all this time. Stephen, who had overheard everything, asked if I was really his mother and if Sophia wasn't his real mom. With tears in my eyes, I hugged Stephen tightly and told him that, yes, I was his mother. I apologized for not knowing sooner and promised him that I would find out what had happened and that I would never leave him again. I was officially recognized as Stephen's biological mother, and Sophia lost her parental rights due to neglect. When Sophia realized she would lose the benefits that came with being his guardian, she suddenly acted like she cared, begging for Stephen's return and claiming she loved him. But Stephen remembered all the abuse and neglect too well. He was grateful for his new parents, Jack and me, and wanted to bring happiness to our family. After a full investigation, detectives finally solved the mystery of my son's disappearance. It turned out that Hannah, in an act of cruelty and desperation, had switched my newborn baby with Sophia's deceased child at the hospital. Learning this, I was shocked and furious, wondering how something like this could have happened and why Hannah wasn't in prison. The detective explained that life had its own way of delivering justice. Hannah was now suffering from a terminal illness and was alone in a mental hospital. When I got home, the house was filled with warmth and love. Jerry and Stephen were playing together, and Jack was cooking. Everyone rushed to greet me. Sitting with my family, I felt deep gratitude for our 3 wonderful sons, my supportive husband, and the fulfilling life we had built. During dinner, the conversation was full of laughter and plans for the future. Stephen, now feeling completely at home with us, shared in the joy. In this house, filled with love, everything seemed to be in harmony. Together, we had overcome so many hardships, and now, leaving the painful past behind, we looked forward to a future full of happiness and unity.